Hey, it's Allie Edwards and welcome back to another episode of Craft the Story. This week we are going to talk about album organization. As you can see behind me here, I have a number of albums that I have created over the years. Many of them hold individual stories that all come together to create a bigger overall story or more collective story. Others are single project albums that have a very specific beginning and an end and hold just one project in them. In this video today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the ways that I've decided to organize over the years, and I want to start off from the very beginning by telling you that there is not a right or a wrong way to do this. So what you're going to hear me talk about is ways that I've done it over the years, ways that have worked for me. I don't feel like I have a perfect system. I don't feel like what I'm going to tell you is something that you're gonna say, oh my God, that's the best thing I've ever heard of, and now I'm gonna run with that. I would tell you that my organization system has evolved over the years, depending on mood, intent, and just what kinds of projects am I making overall. You can see behind me, specifically right here, lots of 12 by 12 albums. And when I first started memory keeping many years ago now, 12 by 12 was kind of the main thing that everyone did. And so in my own house here, we're in my office, and I have these shelves that are built-ins, and these were built specifically when we did a remodel to be able to hold these 12 by 12 albums. But starting down here on the bottom, almost all the ones that are brown in the bottom here are stories about Simon. So from starting in 2002 and then going, looks like about to 2009 probably, in those brown albums, the brown cloth 12 by 12 American Crafts albums. And I'll show you a little bit more, some of the inside of some of those here in a little bit. I just want to start off by talking about what I have here specifically in my own space. Then I have over there are black albums. Those are black pleather albums. Those are Project Life, and mixed in with those are the black and white striped, which are, I think, Heidi Swap for Becky Higgins, or some working together that they did in a way there. And then over here there's an Italy album. Hello Story is a workshop that I ran a number of years ago, and we've done a couple other iterations after that. That holds all of those layouts. I have 2019, 2018, 2019, 2019 Project Life is also over here. So any of these ones that have the year on them, like 2018 or 2019, those are holding any layouts that I made during those years. So they might be 12 by 12, they might be 8.5 by 11, they might be 9 by 12, they might be a variety of different sizes in there. I consider those to be basically a family album that includes stories that we did over the course of the year. As many of you guys know, I don't approach these albums like 2018. If you open up 2018, it is not a chronological documentation of what our year looks like from beginning to end. It is simply a holding place. So it is a holding place for my stories that I told about 2018. It's not the full beginning, I start in January and I end in December kind of storytelling. I do that in my Project Life album. So let's say for 2018, you would find that I have a 2018 12 by 12 album, but then I also have probably 2 Project Life albums for 2018 when I was doing the weekly spreads there. So for many years, that's pretty much how I've been doing it. I'll have 1 or 2 albums for Project Life, and then I would have a single, I think most of the time single. Maybe there was a couple years that had, I can see 2015 up on the top up there had 2 years for it. And then right behind me up above here, and I'll do some other videos so you can see this, but these are some of my December daily albums. I have more than will fit right here. Most of those are 6 by 8, 2019 I did a 4x6, and then I also have some albums that were before we even manufactured albums that hold those projects too. But this is the main home for my albums. I'll show you in a minute here we'll do a little tour of a couple other places where I have them, where they hold my projects. But for the last few years, what I would tell you is that I've basically had Project Life album for either doing monthly documentation or weekly documentation. When I was doing weekly Project Life, I had two albums for most years. Maybe there was, looks like 2011, 2012, maybe I had 3 albums. That's a lot of albums, right? That's a lot of storage. And for many people, it's just too much. So it's something to definitely take into account when you are thinking about what kind of documenting do you want to do and what kinds of stories do you want to tell, and which ones do you care about the most. One of the questions that I often get related to the albums is what's going to happen to them in the future. And I continue to maintain that I tell stories for myself. I'm not doing it for my kids or for anyone else other than me. I learned so much about myself through the process. It's way more about the process for me than it is about the outcome. I imagine that someday down the road, my kids will look back on these, or someone in my family may enjoy looking back on them, even if they are boxed up in tubs, which would be totally fine just as a storage location there. But I'm really not wrapped up in thinking about what's going to happen to these albums in the future. I'm much more focused on how documenting and memory keeping and storytelling serves me personally in a lot of ways. And for some of you who are listening to this right now, you might be like, oh my God, that's just bizarre. Like, why wouldn't you scrapbook for your kids, or why wouldn't you be scrapbooking for posterity? The honest reality is that I scrapbook for me because it helps me understand my life. So these albums behind me are the product of showing up and telling stories over and over again as I experience different things in my life, celebrations, highs, lows, all of those kinds of things. And so for me, the albums are really just a container for those stories. And I honestly don't really get too wrapped up in the organization piece. And that's definitely one thing that I would say to you guys here as we begin to look at some of my albums today, is that if you find that the organizing piece is becoming a barrier to you because you can't figure out how to, what kind of album you want to put it in or where your projects need to go, I really want to encourage you to just get an album, get a 12 by 12 or whatever your main size is, and see that more as a home for the stories that you choose to tell, right? This coming back again and again to a concept that I call starting with story, where the story is the most important thing. Everything else is things that are done to support your stories. And we'll talk more about probably the idea of starting with story in future videos. But let's talk a little bit more about the albums. I'm going to show you a couple other places where I have albums stored and talk a little bit about the function of those albums themselves. Okay, so to the side of those albums over there, I have these IKEA shelves, Kallax shelves here, that hold a bunch of my albums. These albums right here, these are 6x8 albums, and you can see, I'll kind of go in there closer, they have the initials of each one of the kids. And so a couple years ago, I started these 6x8 albums, one for each kid, as a holding place for stories for them. And what I imagine will happen with these in the future is that these would be something that if they wanted to take away with them, they could take them. Most likely, I'll be hanging on to these, and someday down the road, somebody can decide what they want to do with them. And I don't put any if someday down the road my kids are listening to this and watching this and trying to figure out what to do with these albums, it's okay if you let them go. Okay, it's okay if you let them go. They served such a beautiful purpose for me in my life for helping me become a better person. But it's okay if you let them go. How about that? There you go. So back to these 6x8 albums here. So each one of these then holds stories that are specifically about each individual kid. And some of them have more in them than others. That's one of the things that I would like to work on this year, is including working specifically on putting some stories into these albums, specifically for the McKercher kids too. Those of you that don't know, we have a blended family here. I have 2 kids of my own, Simon and Anna, and then the 3 McKercher kids that form our beautifully blended family now. Other things that you will see here, and I'll dive in and I'll show you some of those as well. Other albums that I have, here's like a 2018, 2019, that is holding any layouts, projects that I did during that time. Actually, let's just open it up right now. So this is 2018, 2019. These would be 6x8 projects that I wrote or created during 2018 and 2019. Most of these are using the story kits as a jumping off point for telling the stories. These ones, as you can see here, 2018 and 2019, most of them are in the page protectors. I've got the divided page protectors in here. And I also have lots of blank spaces. And so that's okay. I'm totally fine with that. I don't feel like, I don't open these and go, oh my God, I have blank spaces. Because again, my goal with these albums is simply for them to be a holding place for my different stories. This one was Gratitude, I think from a Gratitude story kit. This was one of the times when I started working outside of the page protectors more, and I super loved it. Again, this one, the label on the spine here was 2018 and 2019. I intend at some point to come in here and adhere these back to back, but I don't have a deep sense of urgency related to that. I'm okay if they are basically just living in here on their own for right now. You can see a transparency where I printed directly onto the transparency there. Hard to do this single-handed. And then full page photo, lots of full page photos. I love the full page photos, definitely a favorite. But this is a look just at what is in one of these 2018, 2019 6x8 albums that I have here. That was a fun one too. Again, outside of the page protector, but building on top of it using elements from the kits. Again, building or creating on top of our transparency. This was a clear one. This is from a trip that we took to Mount Hood a couple years ago. But this was definitely when I was really starting to enjoy working outside of the page protectors. Stuff I love right now. Things on the list. Photo collage. All right, so that's a look at a 2018, 2019. Some of these are empty. They're just ones that I have here for storage. Some of them are, let's see, like there's a 2021. That one's pretty full of things that I did in 2020 that are fit in that 6x8 size. I have one that's just specifically about Story Camp and some of the Story Camp projects that we do at Story Camp. Let me show you here, like this guy. So these are ones that we talk about and create at our Story Camp event. So over here, these ones are project-based albums, at least the first 2. This is Week in the Life here and from 2020, and this is an Ireland album from a trip that we took in 2012 that I used travel products to go back in and create that album. This is, I think, let's see, this has been sometime in the I think it was last year that I did this for the travel workshop for Travel Product Play. You can see a little bit, that looks like that came off on the side there. Printing on vellum, being able to dive in and take a look here at some of the things that are in this travel album. So this is covered in the Travel Play project or product Travel Play Product Play Travel Workshop. You can see how this album came together using a wide variety of things from our travel collection last year, as well as a heavy emphasis on photo enlargement. So that's my my Ireland album. So that's something else that's in an album there. And then I have, looks like I have another blank 3x8 that's waiting for something. And then I have a 2020 number 2. This is a linen album that we sold with December Daily, and I'm just throwing, having it be a home, right, for the albums. Because I feel way less there was a point in time for me where I was like, I need them all to be black, or I need them all to be one color. And I still like having all of the one color of the grays. That's one we have in the shop. But I'm not married to that, and it's not the most important piece for me. The most important piece for me is getting the stories told. Down on the bottom here, we've got this is Anna's individual one. Then we have Anna's baby book. This is a trip we took to Disneyland. This is with Chris. So this would have been in 2006. So a full project based on that. I think that there's a video of that on the blog too. Then you'll also see here I've got one that says, this is 2016. This says Anna's random photos with her own writing on there. Let's see if I can get you to see that. It's Anna's writing. And then this is the family resilience. This is a class that Jess Forrester offered on our site, and it's a really a fantastic class. And if you have not had a chance to check it out, you definitely should. It's a great opportunity to write and document how your family is resilient, and what are the ways in which that is a part of your life and your own family. And you can see a couple pages that I did here. This was, again, I think last year, this was the year before, so probably 2019. I did a little thing that talks about each one of our different roles. These are all based on the prompts that Jess has within that workshop. These, again, little tags with journaling underneath. Yeah, I loved this workshop. Is really awesome. So I will try to remember to link it down below for you guys as well. Really good. We're hoping to have Jess come back and do another round of that workshop. Really valuable content, valuable things to think about in terms of resiliency in your own family and those kinds of stories. Then I have a few, let's see if we can get it, older Week in the Life albums here. This is when I used to do it in the 8.5 by 11 size. So there's 2013, 2011, 2012, that's 07, one of the earlier ones, and then 2008 there as well. So this is where many of my albums live, on that calyx. I also have some out in the hallway here. Let's see what's going on out here. These ones are in another little shelf unit, mixed in with some books. So we've got Week in the Life, a few different years of Week in the Life. Again, once we move to that 6 by 8 size. This one right here is a travel album from, I think that's, oh yeah, this is when we went to Hawaii a couple years ago with all the kids. So in that 3 by 8 size. Then, so other Week in the Lives here, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and then another Peru or a travel album there. This is one of the Week in the Life projects. We'll be doing Week in the Life again most likely in May this year, but here's just a kind of a quick peek of this project, 7-day documenting project, with really the goal of capturing the basics of your everyday life right now. So definitely heavy on the words and photos. All right, and then over here on the other side of my office, I also have a few more albums down here on the bottom. These are one little word albums, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, and then 21 is on the top there. So that's kind of where I've decided to keep those. I've got an earlier one little word here, 31 Things, is a class and a project that you can embark on. Actually, let me show you that one. That's one I haven't pulled out for a while. This is Sam. He's my office cat. Okay, so this is 31 Things. This has been around for a number of years now, but the basic idea with this one is that you are taking a single word, using that as a jumping off point to tell stories. So each one of these has a photo and then it has a story below it. Jewelry, reading, spirit, these are a bunch of the different ones. And I just have a very simple formula that I'm following in terms of how I put this together. Again, this is a workshop that you can take. We have 31 things and then we also have 31 more things in there, but that will show you, and how to put together an album like this that's really focused on writing about yourself and telling your own story, using single words as a jumping off point. There's actually two workshops now, and they have templates included with them to make this really easy for printing out. I just use printed photos, did washi tape, and then typed up my story for each one. So that's actually the whole entire album is just like that. That's 31 Things, or 31 More Things is the name of that class. So one thing I wanted to show you guys over here in my larger album storage space, in addition to all the ones that are Simon here along the bottom, I also have a couple that are Chris. So Chris is my first husband. There are some albums about him, albums about his work. I also have 2 albums about our story together over there. And then here in the middle, I have 3 of them that are basically just about me, or stories about myself. There's one that's in progress. And then I have 3 that are my growing up family. So stories that would include my my family of origin mixed in with stories of Chris, or, you know, after he came to be a part of our family. And then these 3 that are stories about me. And I would say that it's been a long time since I've added specifically to these albums. I've been working more in a 6x8 size for those kinds of things, and I've found that these days, for me, it just makes more sense to put them into annual albums based on when the stories are told. But let's say I tell a story about myself from you know, let's go back. Let's say it's 1976 and I'm going to write a story about myself. It would depend for me on if I'm telling a story about what life was like at that point in time, and there's very little reflection of like me looking back, that would probably go into one of those. But if it's more me talking about today, who I am today, and with some reflection on who I was back then, I would probably put that in a 2020 album, or 2021, whatever year it is that I'm actually writing it. While we are talking about albums today, I thought it would be really fun to go back and look at a couple of these albums and the different projects that are, or the pages that I did back in time. So this one is Simon 2002. So most of these were probably created in 2002, 2003. This is right when I first started scrapbooking, which was basically about when Simon was a year old. So these are the projects that I made back then. This is back when I was posting a lot to the site called 2 Peas in a Bucket, which used to be around many years ago. That was really my introduction to scrapbooking. Lots, even from the beginning, you can see enlarged photos. That's something that I've loved for a long time. But on these first few ones, you see short stories, right? Little bits of story. And that's one of the things that I definitely over the years have really kind of found my own voice in terms of how much I care about the actual words that give context to the photos and to the stories themselves. So it's really fun to go back and look at these and not only remember the stories, but also remember what did I like about the way that I was scrapbooking at this point in time, which things made me really happy. And now I want to tell you a little bit of a story about this one in particular. Aaron, my husband Aaron, was in here the other day, and I was pulling these out. I was taking some pictures for a different project that I was working on, and he saw this picture of Simon with a cast on when he was, you know, not yet a year old. And one of the coolest things was that I had actually written the long version of this. And this was at a point in time where I don't think I was really writing as much, but I was able to kind of document the entire story so that Aaron was able to sit here and read it. What he said was that I'm a much better writer today than I was back then, which that is just from showing up again and again and again to my stories, right? And you know, embracing the practice of writing the stories of our lives. But I love that I have that, right? And you can go back in time and tell those kinds of stories, but it's way more, the in the moment journaling just continues to be something I really enjoy. Obviously, you know, new baby, that was kind of the reason why I jumped into this. And I just took lots and lots of pictures of Simon, and then I really enjoyed making these projects. There's a little bit of a longer story, you know, and seeing Chris and Simon and Christmas and all the stuff. We'll just flow through here a little bit. Lots of green, I'm noticing. That's kind of fun to notice too. Obviously my life looked very different at this point in time, right? It just had a completely different look and feel, which it's almost 20 years ago now, and it's kind of amazing to reflect back on those. That's one I super remember there. So I wanted to just show you guys so you can see this was kind of my starting place, right? This was where I started in the beginning, starting to document everyday life, starting to really love having the combination of words and photos together. Always loving a grid, right? Grids forever. I love that I have this of the first year of Simon's life there. This one you can tell is a little bit of a newer one, but it's kind of similar somewhat in terms of having that the grid basis with all those photos there. This one here, which was about Simon's birth story, and as you can see, just is celebrating his birthday right now, longer journaling, right? And actually telling the story of when he was born, which is fantastic also because I don't remember all of those details. So having taken the time to write out this story is super meaningful to me. And I would say, especially like looking back through this album itself and thinking about the kinds of stories I want to tell going forward, the two that I've shown you here that had the most words, those are the ones that feel the most meaningful to me when I look back at them. So the story about the cast and this one about what happened when he was born, those are the ones I think that you know, if I had to pick two to save out of all of these, those would be the ones that I feel like I would definitely not want to let go of and that would feel really important to me. I think this is actually one of the first things that I ever did was just setting this page up. I remember very specifically going to a craft store in Coos Bay, Oregon and picking up the pattern paper there. Printing on vellum. Again, this is back many, many years ago. And then reusing that same photo. So that's one of the albums, one of the many, many, many albums I have about Simon. And I just wanted to show you guys so you could see what it looked like back then for me. And that's what is contained in so many of those brown albums, especially from when I first started, really related a lot of them to Simon. All right, so now I'm gonna jump ahead 17 years this is 2019, and what I want to show you here is this is what I basically call my annual album, right? So for 2019, 2020, 2021, I'll set up a 12 by 12 that will hold anything, you know, anything 12 by 12 and smaller, right, of projects that I do that it wouldn't go into one of my 6 by 8 albums. So I basically have a 12 by 12 for the year, a 6 by 8 for the year, and then if I'm doing Project Life, then I would have the Project Life albums, and then I have the individual projects that I do. That's essentially kind of the simplified version of what I'm doing right now is a larger annual album, 12 by 12 annual album, I'm just repeating what I just said, and the 6 by 8 annual album for those sized projects, as well as any of the other project based albums, Week in the Life, December Daily, those sorts of things, each will have their own album. So 8.5 by 11, 9 by 12, those are all included in here. A lot of these again would be using story kits as the jumping off point for these layouts. These ones again I believe are 9 by 12. Let's just double check. There's my ruler. Yeah, no, actually that's 8.5. These are 8.5 by 11, and then 9 by 12 will be the other ones. So again, you can see like these ones, they're inside the page protectors. That's what I would generally do inside an album like this. Here's one that includes a 6 by 8. So that the ability to play with different size page protectors in one album has always been something that I've valued once I figured out that that was something that could be done, or I saw other people doing it. And then full page photos. Again, full page photos continue to be one of my favorite ways to tell stories. Story about a yellow house. Some of these maybe are from the hybrid workshop, or hybrid product play. That's another one. This one I think is from the design story kit, if I remember right. Here's one that combines a 9x12 full page photo with a 12x12 and a 6x8 in the middle, because I had some things that I wanted to include. Again, these are the kinds of layouts that you would find in the story kit classroom too, if I'm remembering right. Sometimes I can't remember where all of these things go, but definitely there's the grid, right? Still working on a grid. This was fun, one playing with large shapes. Just the repetition of shapes tends to be something that I really enjoy. And the structure of our family is different in 2019 than it was back in 2002 when I first started. So still lots of big projects here. This is one with Simon. Oh, that's a fun one. It's fun for me to look back at these. I don't spend a lot of time looking back in my albums. Most of, I do a lot more forward movement. In my projects, I think I do more reflection, internal reflection, and then the projects are usually going forward. But this was one where I took pictures of all my tennis shoes, which is something that I love. This was from a trip that we took to Seattle. Again, here's a grid, a circle grid this time. And here's a great example of, again, where I just have empty pages and no urgency to fill them in. That's just not really something that I'm worried about, because for me, it's all of these individual stories that come together to tell the bigger story of our life as well. So here, painting, stamping. This is one of my favorite photos. I have this blown up in the house here, lots of pink on that one. This was Aaron's dog Woody, who passed away a couple years ago, and I put this one together after that happened. And then moving in here to a variety of different stories. This is a 3x8 that goes with a 12x12, right? The reminder that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be all 12x12, doesn't have to be all 8.5x11, doesn't have to all be 6x8. Having variety, I think, is super nice to be able to decide what works best for the story that we're telling. All right, so continuing on here, another favorite photo there. Sounds of Life, listening to grid, stitched grid. Always a grid, always a grid. Things I'm thankful for. Full page photos, lots of those continuing. Here's a grid, right? 4. Another one of my favorites. I actually just saw that in Project Life spread recently too. Lots of circles there, lots of layers. Again, pairing another 3x8. This is great for when you want to play with a 12x12 and you want it to be, mainly photos or embellishments, or you have other things that you want to add on here. I've got a grid of photos from a trip we took to Mexico. And then I was able to type up and make the story as long as I wanted it to be and have it right here, right? It can still be included in the album as a story that goes with this. And then talking about a story about going from 3 to 7, right? Here's our merged family. Talking about around the table, that's one of my favorite topics, and showing different photos of what we do at our dining room table. Boys, lots of big people here watching Simon grow. Ooh, I haven't looked at this one for a long time. These are some of my favorites though. Here's a giant full page 12x12 photo. These can be printed on that Epson 15,000 printer that I have and that I've linked for you guys previously. And then taking this theme, I think the theme here was watch, and repeating journal cards, pairing those with photos of Simon of what are the ways that I watch him. Watching him do this, watching him do that, right? I'm telling the story from my personal perspective about him. And here was some other things that we were watching at this point in time when I documented that story. So that's a look at all of the just different stories that I told in 2019 that went into this album. I'm gonna look over and grab one of the 6x8 ones so you can see the inside of that too. Again, I'm not concerned that I need to have everything documented. These are just the stories that I chose to tell in 2019 in these sizes, right? And that's where, that's how this album becomes a home for these particular stories. All right, next up, I didn't see 2019 over there, but I think it might be mixed in with the 2020. So this is in a 6x8, just a chipboard album. These are the kinds that we have in the shop for various projects throughout the year. We also have them in pleather, in the grayish, and in the black. This 6x8 size has been one that I've really been enjoying. I like both. I still like the big 12x12, and so if I come across a story where I feel like doing it in that size, I do it in that size and it will go in one of those larger albums. But if I feel like doing it in a 6x8 size, then it will go in one of these smaller 6x8 sized albums. So here's one from, this is 2020. So these would be stories that I told in 2020 in this size, or stories from 2020 that are in the 6x8 size. So these ones, looks like, at least the initial ones I'm first clicking on, that I'm first flipping through here, are inside page protectors, and then there are some of them that are outside. Here's where I've included like one of these 2x2 page protectors, which is a great just reminder to me that I have them, and I paired that with a grid based a grid printout of 2x2 photos there. And then we move in, here's one that's outside of the page protector. This is celebrating my friend Molly that I like to hike with. So being able to play outside the page protectors mixed in with playing with things inside the page protectors. So just as you saw in the 12x12 albums, I still continue to come back to the full page photo and then often something else on the other side, right? The play or the story or the whatever, pairing that with the full page photo right next to it. And here's those ones, like I said, again, where they're, yes, I could go in and adhere them back to back, but I don't really care. I might do it, I might not do it, and that's gonna be just fine with me. Let's see, here we go into, this one was really fun. This was a story about cats, and this was something that my mom had found where I wrote, literally, like I was in first grade and wrote a story about my cat, and then some pictures and then some more content about the cat over there. But this is the kind of stuff that my mom saved, and when I have access to that, it's so fantastic because I can combine, you know, a story about today and the cats that I care about now combined with a story of my cat when I was growing up. All right, let's go see what else we got here. This was a fun one, stuff I love. I think this one was in the hybrid product play. So creating little tags that could be pulled out. Again, this is that working outside of the page protector opportunity, right? To play a little bit more with sizes and texture and shaker pockets and getting to feel all that stuff. Here's another one outside the page protector. This was telling a little bit of a story about confetti that was a big part of our wedding. We got married here at home, and this was a fun way to document that that piece of our wedding story there. Wholehearted love for Simon, story about him. Documenting 5 things, again, outside of the page protector. All of these ones like this can be inside the page protector. They could be 6x8 very easily. I'm just choosing to have some of them outside because that feels fun to me. Let's see what this one's sticking to here. Every once in a while I will find where that has happened, and which is a reason why I think some people would like to not have things in, or would rather have them inside the page protector. I'm okay with it generally, even if I have something like this that becomes a mistake. I'm gonna try to get that off of there. It looks like there was probably a rubber piece that was on top. Whenever we do events locally here, or sometimes when I travel, I will take albums with me, and so lots of different people have handled them over the years, which I'm also totally fine with, and I'm fine with, you know, things fall off, that's okay. But repetition here again, yay. Tags, repeated tag shapes there. Fun one about Anna and Audrey here. Again, these are all outside of the page protectors. Forward movement, tags, again, repeating shapes. That's a lot of what I do here. And again, many of these were either from workshops, the hybrid workshop, hybrid product play 2, or story kits. And you know, these are ones that I don't always share except for within those spaces. So some of you might be seeing a lot of things for the first time here, which is just a good example of that. I haven't stopped memory keeping all these years. I've been consistently and consistently telling the stories of our lives that are important to me. All right, a couple more here, just so you can get a sense. This was a fun one for using a bunch of chipboard pieces, right? Being able to bring them all together and go for quantity in terms of the design of my page. Lots and lots of shape-based things there. Not as easy to turn the page for sure, but that's okay. Here's a This Is Us one, telling the story about being around the table. Again, repeated shapes, right? So I'm always looking for opportunities to include repeated shapes. So again, this is an album that's just a family album, right? It's stories about me, it's stories about us, it's stories about the you know, the ways that we interact with each other. If I had a story that was very specifically about one kid or another, that would go into their own individual album. I was trying to go back. I know there was a couple about Simon, or here's one, you know, like this one about the girls. Because it's about both of them, I'm just including it in this family album. But if I do something that's specifically about one of them, then that would go into their individual 6x8 album. Kindness story kit there. Love Your Kind Heart. And another one about Aaron and I, life being an adventure. That was a fun one to do too. Let's see, what else do I have? And then one about transitions from the transition story kit in the back there. So that's a look at what you would find in terms of 6x8 albums for me. Again, the way that I view albums is as a holding place. So you know, they are there to hold stories. They serve a very specific function for me, and I would definitely tell you that over the years I have let go of a lot of things related to the albums, and again, feeling like they need to be perfect, or they need to be all filled in, or oh my god, I have an empty space here, well, you know, do I have to fill it in on the other side? And my answer is no. That's my personal answer that I choose for myself. I also don't do like a beginning page for the album and an end page, because really, again, what these are is they're holding place for, they're just a holding place for my stories. All right, so I hope that this look at album organization from here in my office has been helpful for you. Let me know if you guys have any questions below. Again, just reiterating what I said in the beginning, there is not a right or a wrong way to do this. There really is just whatever works for you, and it's definitely possible that what works for you at one point in time may not work for you later on, and it's okay to evolve. It's okay to change things up. It's okay to move them around. What I do want to encourage you though is to have a home for your projects, to have an album that you can slip them into, and if it works for you, to let go of feeling like they need to be in there in a very specific way, and just simply let them hold the stories. All right, we'll see you guys back here again next week for another episode of Craft the Story. I would love to invite you to subscribe if you're enjoying this content, and if you'd like to be notified of future videos. Have a great week.